So today virtually we'll work through the odds, and I'll bring up some of the things that we talked about in class yesterday, but for the most part we'll kind of relive some of this. Remember, we're going all the way back to chapter 1. Chapter 1 was where we reviewed simplifying and solving, and so simplifying, combining like terms. Watch out for signs. This is still a struggle for some people. This is positive 8 plus negative 10, or 8 minus 10, negative 2k. You can only combine like terms. So in a problem like 3, I will distribute 50n plus 100 minus 1, but the 100 minus 1 is the only thing that can be combined. So this is 50n plus 99. That's my final answer for that one. Okay, so again, keep an eye on those things when you're working through. Now, the difference between an expression and an equation is the equal sign. And when you see an equation, then you can solve. I can't solve an expression because there's no equal sign to it. So when I get to the equations, I can start solving. So I have two approaches on problem number 5. Either I can distribute negative 3m plus 15 equals negative 21 and solve by subtracting the 15. Negative 3m equals negative 36, and then dividing by the negative 3. So m is 12. Or I can divide out the negative 3. So that's negative 3 times m minus 5 equals negative 21. I divide the negative 3 out on both sides, so m minus 5 is 7. And then what do I subtract 5 from to get 7? M is 12. I can do that just the same by doing 7 plus 5. Either way is fine. I actually prefer this way. I think it's quicker and easier instead of having to distribute, but it's personal preference. And the other thing is sometimes you have to distribute. You don't have a choice because you have more things going on. So I can't just divide the 6 out here. It's not going to work that way. It's not going to go into things evenly, and there's, again, too much stuff going on. So I'll start by distributing. That's negative 6x minus 12 plus 2x, and then combining like terms. Negative 4x minus 20 equals negative 4x minus 12. Right now I recognize something. I've got negative 4x and negative 4x on both sides. When I start to solve by adding the 4x to get rid of it, I'm going to end up with negative 20 equals negative 12. This is never true. So we talked about this yesterday. If I end up with something that's never true, this is a no solution situation. So no solution. We have all reals, many solutions, and no solutions. Watch out for those. Just because one of these is an option for the multiple choice doesn't mean it's the answer. So keep that in mind as well when you're working through. Absolute value, I have to refresh that. Remember that what's inside of here could be positive or could be negative, so I end up with two equations that I'm solving for. N minus 1 could be positive 9 to get this result, and n minus 1 could be negative 9 to get this result. And so I'm going to have to solve those. If I add 1, I get n equals 10, but if I subtract 1, I get n equals negative 8. So my two solutions are negative 8 and 10. Oftentimes it'll be written in set notation in multiple choice, and usually they put the smallest number first and the bigger number second. They'll put it in order from least to greatest. It's not that you have to write it that way, that's just typical. Okay? Then we got into slope. If you didn't get this down yesterday, please do. Remember, positive is rising, negative is dropping, undefined is straight up and down, 0 is that flat line. So you'll see undefined and 0 as we go through. We discussed slope-intercept form, but now let's go through the formula for slope. It is slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, where in this point I have x1, y1, x2, y2, and I put it in this formula as a fraction. People are really kind of sloppy, like, oh, it doesn't really matter what I put where. It does. Follow the formula. So this is 15 minus negative 6 over 4 minus 20. I did minus -6 by changing it to plus positive right away. Then when I do my math, I get 21 over -16. This will be written as -21 over 16 when you have your answer. Keep in mind, if I get a number over 0, it's undefined. If I get 0 over a number, it's 0. Watch out for those two special cases. If I get 0 on the bottom, that means the x's must be the same because the x is on the bottom. If I get 0 on the top, that means the y's must be the same. So 0 on the top is 0. So again, jot this down. Special case, be aware. That number that I have here, hashtag here, that's any number. Any number can go in there. It doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. If 0 is on the bottom, it's undefined. If 0 is on the top, it's 0. Well, then we talked about, again, finding the slope. Well, if I'm going to write the slope-intercept form of an equation, which is this form, y equals mx plus b, I need a y-intercept and a slope. What I usually do is find the y-intercept first. It's where it crosses the y-axis. So here, my b equals 2. And then I'll find my slope by finding another point. If it crosses the x-axis at a nice spot, I'll write that down. If it doesn't, I may have to find another one. But this one does. So I'm going to find my slope. Remember, it's rise over run. Because it is dropping, it's negative. So my slope is -2 over 1 or -2. Once I find those two pieces, I can put it in this form. Y equals -2x plus 2 would be my final answer. So find your y-intercept, find your slope, put it into the form of the equation. Next, you're going to get into more writing equations, and we talked about this yesterday. If you're given the slope and the y-intercept, easy peasy, just put them in the right spot. But let's say you're given slope or given an equation in standard form. This one is ax plus by equals c, and it's a long time ago that we talked about this. The number in front of x is a, the number in front of y is b, the number in front, or the number that stands alone is c. The slope is the opposite of a over b, and the y-intercept is, so big B, little b different. Big B is the number in front of y, little b is the y-intercept. The y-intercept, little b, is c over b. So if I find my slope, I would do the opposite of a, -3, over b, which is -4 or 3/4. And my y-intercept is c over b, so 8 over -4, 8 over -4, which reduces down to -2. My equation would then be y equals 3/4 x plus -2, or I write it as -2. And in fact, it's multiple choice, and so it's going to always be written in the simplest form. We had more talk of writing given information, so we brought up point slope form. We're going to bring up point slope form again in our next problem. We saw it is with a perpendicular slope. Perpendicular slopes are opposite reciprocal. Parallel slopes are nice. Parallel slopes are the same. So if you see parallel slope, it's the same slope. So when I find my slope in this problem, I've got my slope for my answer. If my directions are leave it in point slope form, remember I use this form. Get this down. Y minus y1 equals x minus x1. I have x1, y1 in that point. So this is y minus -3 equals the same slope, -5/4 times x minus 4. Point slope form says leave it as is. So I'm done with that problem. I just have to recognize what the slope is. Again, if it's perpendicular, flip and change the sign, and then plug it in. We ran through the polynomials. Remember, when you subtract, you have to change all the signs in the second polynomial, but if you add, you just drop the parentheses, leave everything the same, and combine like terms. So 4 plus 5 is 9, 3x to the 4th plus 2x to the 4th is 7x to the 4th, 6x squared plus 3x squared is 9x squared. When you are looking for your answer, because your problems are going to be a multiple choice, remember that it'll write it in descending order. So I go highest power, next highest power, last highest power, or no power at all to end it. So descending order. Again, subtract, change all the signs in the second parenthesis. Addition, you can just drop the parentheses like they weren't even there. When it comes to the power rules, keep in mind that you're going to put your numbers together and your variables that match together. If I don't see a number on a letter, then I assume it's 1. And so regular numbers get multiplied. Powers get added. That's 3 u's plus 3 more u's. That's 6 u's being multiplied. 4 v's plus another v. That's 5 v's being multiplied. And likewise, when it's on the top and on the bottom, as opposed to next to, where we add, when it's on the top and the bottom, we subtract. I look at where are there more and how many more. Well, the 3 has nothing to combine with, so it's going to stay at the top. I have m's on the top and on the bottom. I have 1 m on the top, 4 m's on the bottom, so there are 3 more m's on the bottom. I don't have any n's on the top. I have 3 n's on the bottom, so there's going to stay 3 n's on the bottom, and that's my simplified form. 3 over m cubed n cubed. One thing I want to remind you of again, if you have a negative power, remember that goes into the denominator, so if you end up with a negative power in your answer, don't forget to move that to the denominator. All right, we are finishing up finding the product. This is a double distribute. So I have to multiply everything in the first by everything in the second. 7x times 2x gives me 14x squared. 7x times 3 gives me plus 21x. Then I go to the next one. 2 times 2x plus 4x. We did this in the box method as well. 2 times 3 plus 6. If I can combine any like terms, I do. I'll end up with 14x squared plus 25x plus 6 for my final answer. If you want to draw this out in the box method, you can as well. I put 7x and 2, 2x and 3, and then you remember you multiply these out. 14x squared, 21x, 4x, 6. The diagonals should be like terms, so I'm going to combine those. I should end up with the exact same answer. 14x squared plus 25x plus 6. So either way, whichever one feels better for you, go with it. We reverse distributed. That's where you pull that out. Where I'm double distributing, I'm multiplying together. This is where I'm undoing and pulling things out. And sometimes you're going to have to reverse distribute before you do the snowflake method. And that's what we did in 28. But in 27, it's just a straight snowflake. There's nothing in common in all of these. So my top number is 32. My bottom number is negative 12. N is the variable that I'm looking at. If I can't figure out what I need for this, sometimes I'll start with 1 and the number, 1 and 32. There's nothing I can do with 1 and 32 to get 12. So I'll try 2, 2 and 16. Nothing I can do with 2 and 16 to get 12. 3 doesn't go into 32. 4 and 8. Now that looks good. 4 and 8, if I make them both negative, I should get negative 12. If I multiply a negative times a negative, I do get positive 32. So sometimes you're going to have to play around with the numbers. When I'm done, I'd write this as n minus 4 times n minus 8. Or I could write it as n minus 8 times n minus 4. Again, in multiple choice, it might be written either way. If the signs are different, like in number 28 that we did yesterday in class, then it could be written as 3 times x plus 2 x minus 4. Keep in mind that the plus will stay with the 2 and the minus will stay with the 4, but the order that you write those parentheses in doesn't change. Please go back, rewind, adjust, rewrite, write things down, get yourself ready for your final. You can have this paper handy, so anything you have on here that's going to help you is great. The order of your final is going to follow this order. Jot down those little things about slope, about the snowflake method, what it means to distribute or find that product. So there should be no question about what is expected of you. If you have questions, as always, ask. And I'll see you on the day of the final.